Testing one, can you hear me?
You got it.
What's up? I don't know
Hey,
why I didn't hear any. Oh, hold on, I gotta turn. Let me do. I I have an echo. 1 second.
oh,
Make sure I turn this down. All right, I'm back. Let's get that out of the way. This right here, remove that from stage. Uh, there's already a couple people in there. Good to see all you
neat.
guys. It is Craig and Walt, with our newest show, our new show, Web of Facts. It is our second show. Good to see you, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing great, brother. It's good to see you. How are you?
Good, good. And if you guys haven't noticed, we both have smiles on our face because we have been talking since the last time we did a show. And it turns out that I'm quite fond of Walt, and I think he might be the same because we have a whole lot in common. And I think we dig doing the show. What do you think?
I love it. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of ground we still haven't covered yet. Every time we start to talk, it explodes into a giant conversation. And I can't wait to see where we go today.
No doubt. Jody's in the house. We got Let's in the house. Let's is one of my mods. I appreciate you being
Yeah,
here.
I remember
And
him.
in fact, let me ask you a question. I think I've asked you before. You do have a channel, right?
Me? Yeah,
Yeah.
I got a
Okay.
channel, but I don't do nothing on it. Not yet. I
Okay.
got to learn from you first.
All right. Well, we need to figure out a way to make you. We can do all that stuff on the backside. But that way people can start subscribing to you and those kind of things, right?
Hey, why not? Sure. But I'm loving
All
what
right.
we're doing here. I think our energy is really good. We bounce off each other like we're playing some kind of tennis or something.
And you know what? It's funny that you say that because I used to play racquetball with my uncle. Now, w- my there's a doctor in the family, and he actually took all of the cousins to learn tennis one summer, maybe 2 summers in a row. Uh, and when we were younger, I think it was kind of cool, but I wasn't feeling it. But the
Not
racquetball,
me
now
either.
that's a different story.
As a
Mm,
kid, I did play racquetball. There was a racquetball court pretty close to the house, and we would we were crazy. We would mostly ride skateboards all over it and stuff like that. But I did buy a racquetball and some rackets to play with my girlfriend, who turned into my wife when we first
nice.
started dating. And so that was my only foray into racquetball.
Nice, nice. I see that Let's has put, your website in. You guys should check it out,
Thanks.
websites, design, and all of the above, it seems like, and a very knowledgeable man as we will see and have seen so far, digging with each other. So I named the now, I'm gonna preface myself before I talk about everything, but racial bias and algorithms, a historical perspective, uh, and I think you don't mind me saying, but you kind of intimated that, "Whoa, Craig, are we gonna go into this deep racial kind of thing and AI stuff?" Is that a fair statement?
I mean, I'm not afraid to go into any territory. It's just who I am.
Sure.
I go with good intentions. I don't want to step on any landmines, and I certainly don't intend to. Who knows what's going to come out of my mouth? I'm going to be as truthful and honest as I can be, and I'm here to learn too. So I always approach things with that learner mindset. So while I might share a lot of ideas and some expertise, I don't know everything, and I don't claim to. I know less than what I really realize there is to know.
Hey, man. Well, and I think the cool thing about having met you, uh, and you being so knowledgeable in the areas that you are, and I'm gonna describe them as, obviously AI type stuff. You were a teacher in the past, scientific, I have a scientific background as well. I worked in the clinical laboratory. So sometimes the things that we talk about, uh, it's kind of like a give and take with regards to the things that I know that you know, and I can bounce a question off, and you're right there with me, but it's kind of a pure interaction that kinda makes it cool to discover these things together because, like you said, you may not have thought about some of the things I've just introduced you recently with regards to, uh, Black History Month, AI, those kind of things, but then when I brought them to you, it was like, "Okay, I can dig that." In fact, can I tell what happened this morning when we talked?
Yeah, of course, of
Okay.
course.
So, and it remains to be seen whether we're gonna be able to introduce this individual. eh, let's just say that his name is I think it's Tyrone, actually with an M instead of an N,
It is.
right?
Right.
So I see this name, the email that you sent, we might get this guy on the show, and I said, "Could you have gotten a Jamal or a Malcolm or whatever? We got Tyrone." And you at first you paused, but then you kind of got where I was going, right?
You had a joke there, and I was not ready for that. You caught me off guard. And I was like, "Is it appropriate for me to laugh about this? I don't even know. I'm kind of scared, you know." Maybe scared's not the right word, but you want to be sensitive to things. At least I do. I don't try to
Okay,
go around. I mean, I don't mind pissing people off if they know me because
sure.
they know where it's coming from. But I would rather do that after I've put enough. What I call it the emotional bank account. You got to put some
Mm.
deposits in before you can take out.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I mean, you've treated the things that I haven't known so far with the velvet gloves, and so I appreciate it. And on some level, I'm going to keep it like as if I really truly do have the types of questions that I do have, and it's kind of related just because this particular way that it was introduced to me, that being was it facial recognition, for example,
Hmm.
it's a race thing, but it also has some gender things going on too. But me being a black person, it kind of caught my attention. So let me pause real quick, and I will go with our first segment, and we'll lay down the groundwork for what we're going to go into. All right, give me 1 second. This is the newest part of what we go through. So, did you hear that sound?
I didn't hear nothing.
Oh my god, I'm so upset that that didn't come across, but
But maybe
it's
they
okay.
did. I don't know. Maybe the audience heard it.
It's all right. Let's see. Well, you guys tell me if you heard what I was trying to do, which was do a segment to run into what we're gonna go into. Okay. So, it's okay though. I can get over it. All right. Let's start with, for example, now talking about AI, which we have already.
Mhm.
Describe to us what an algorithm is.
Got it.
Okay.
So an algorithm is really just a set of procedures. It's basically what you've been trained to do. You could say a dance with dance moves that have been choreographed is an algorithm.
Okay.
So essentially, when you're talking about an algorithm in a computer terms, what you're talking about is the way the system is designed to react to input and then how it returns output. So that's all an algorithm is. Now, you've heard the term algorithm replied or applied to social media. So
Mhm.
the algorithm in that case is where you put your mouse, where you click, what's the topic. There's the
Ah,
metadata about that. So if you click on things with race cars, there's much more likely that you can have race cars show up in your feed. If you click stuff on cameras, you might have a lot more cameras. Some of the algorithms are listening to the words that you say on your smartphone. And when you say shopping for a queen size mattress, all of a sudden the next 3 days you're going to have queen size mattresses showing up on your Facebook. Those are all algorithms.
okay, okay. Alright, so when it comes, because it like you were describing, when we talk about, like, for example, I will say to the audience, if you haven't already, please, give us a like, drop a comment, share with somebody if you know the content. We say because it helps the algorithm. So,
Right.
I think the perspective that I've had, and maybe some other people had as well, that we're just talking about kinda stroking the system, if you will, of what
That's it.
YouTube. Yeah,
Yeah.
stroking the system because it's expecting when you have a good product that people will do X things. And when you
Correct.
do those things, then they try to make it so that other people will do the same thing, meaning that you have a person a video that's been watched more and more often. Does that make
Right.
sense?
That's
Okay.
100% right. Yep.
Okay, cool. So now we talk about before we even get to race being involved at all, there is a certain amount of data that is collected
Mhm.
because of the algorithm that the system already has, right? So let's talk about then about where bias comes into that kind of equation. If
Okay.
I've made my question clear.
I think so. I'm good enough that I can probably work with that.
Okay.
Um,
And then
okay.
I mean, be feel free to
Sure.
clarify if it doesn't make sense to you, then it's probably not going to make sense to the audience. So I want my question to be clear, but that my intent in understanding is pure.
Absolutely. So when you're talking about the types of data that get collected in algorithms, and every single software is a little different, right?
Mhm.
So when you're talking about facial recognition, that's based on training. When you're talking about social media, you're talking about demographics and psychographics and a whole bunch of other types of graphics that we're not even going to get into.
Sure.
So what happens is you can categorize things by traits. At the at the bare basis bottom of what we're talking about is categorization.
Okay.
And I don't know, you have to kind of understand a little bit about data and maybe databases. And but if you're familiar with Excel spreadsheets, you know how you can make columns on an
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheet.
Mhm.
And this column represents first name, the second one is last name, and the third one is, and you go through all these different things that are joined together and related to each other. So, what these algorithms often do, and some of them are very specific, some of them are very vague, but they are categorizing interactions and joining them to IP addresses, and then other times they can, connect those to an individual, and then what they call PII, personal information. And so, what happens is that all these digital things are getting your signature. It's kind of like a digital thumbprint or fingerprints. Okay.
Okay.
And it's going into these gigantic databases. And the thing that is most incredible about this is the amount of data that we give off. Like you walk outside and you look around and you say, okay, there's a dog and there's a cat. But you don't just say it's a dog, it's a cat. You recognize the cat as Bruno or Tigress or whatever, and that's more information about it. And then you could say, "Oh, that's a tabby," or "That's a Siamese cat," and
Sure.
all these little categorizations end up becoming a thumbprint, a digital thumbprint.
Okay.
And go ahead.
I'm sorry, I wanna ask this question. Now you talked about just now about how we interact with all of those things. Now the
Mhm.
way that AI interacts is a little bit different, right?
Can be, but it can be the same.
Okay, well, because okay, so that's the interesting part, and I know that you know that my dilemma in my mind is kind of recognizing, because you taught me this, that the way AI learns is kind of based on a network with the brain, the way the brain
Yeah.
works?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm gonna summarize it very simple, and this works in both the human brain, the animal brain, the anything that's got neurons, and this applies to computers, even though they're not neurons the way we have neurons, but they are digital neurons. Okay,
Okay.
neurons that fire together wire together.
Okay.
Okay, that's why when you see people smiling on TV and they're saying "living the life I want" and they got herpes, you're supposed to, that's what they're selling you, this Valtrex to take, you know, and they're telling the people that, hey, you got herpes but you can live the life you want. They're creating a firing of the neurons. They're
Mhm.
having a barbecue, they got all their friends even though they're lonely in reality because they got herpes, but instead they want to picture this life of, they've identified people that are lonely want to have 12 or 10 friends. They want to have an outdoor grilling, event, and they did a big gigantic analysis and found that the bell curve of people that are interested in this type of medicine, they're going to correlate that on a commercial, and that's going to
Mm.
get the attention of the people that they are targeting as their audience. The thing about marketing that's a little bit, and it's not just marketing, it's everything. We all do this all the time. We do it ourselves. We just don't do it as sophisticated with the data and the analysis and the strict consistency that algorithms are being designed to now, and with the AI.
Mhm.
But what we're doing is we're categorizing things, and we're saying that all things that match this trait are this way. And you and I both know that that's not a true statement. But the
Mhm.
bell curve, the statistical bell curve would say that most of those, and they're not really interested in 100%. They're actually interested in about 68, about one or two standard deviations away from the center.
Well, so and that's something that I discovered, of late, China has been in the news. Is it called DeepSeek? I think that's the what
It
one
is,
of
yeah,
the things, I'm just mentioning it, but
right.
there's a kind of a distinct difference between what's going on AI, in
Mhm,
China versus in America, because in
mhm,
China, for example, they have this social thing going on where, if you wanna get onto the internet, you have to,
Yeah.
agree to using your face and biometrics and
Mhm.
those kind of things.
Right.
Whereas, so that's a social thing to keep them in line. Whereas
Right.
in America, it's all about money.
Mhm.
So the I am I onto something that there's a difference in, like, wait a minute, I mean, I don't know if we've gone off the beaten path with, because we haven't really gotten
No,
into
we'll
the,
get back to it.
okay, sure, but
I'll
I
keep it
just
there.
think it's I thank you. I think it's interesting, though, that we have 2 types of way of AI being utilized, vastly different, but on some level, the consequences of it all are probably equally profound.
Yes. So, okay, let's break these into small pieces so we don't have to eat the whole hamburger in one bite.
Sure, and I'm not
So,
even hungry.
yeah, well, I'll tell you that there's a lot of complexity to what you just touched on. Okay, with
Okay,
the deep seek, the China, the algorithms, the facial recognition. I mean, to bring this all back around, I'm going to go back to the neurons that fire together, wire together. Okay,
okay,
because what they are is associations. They are correlations. They're not certain matches. It's not a one-to-one correspondence. It's a correlation that when this goes up, this goes up. They're not 100%. There might be a ratio, there might be a delay, there might be a trigger, what's the word I'm looking for? An algebraic equation that matches it, but they're
okay,
related in some way. So the thing about the difference between the way that the West, meaning the United States and most of Europe, looks at the whole entire I don't want to use the word arms race, but let's call it the AI race. Okay.
okay.
Versus the way that the Chinese culture looks at their entire culture is very different.
Mm,
Um, we have baked into our DNA the idea of capitalism. Even if you are against capitalism on some level or feel like capitalism has been used to exploit the masses, the reality is you can't escape it. Just like if you're born in the US, whether regardless of what religion, you still understand Christmas is going to happen in December. There's certain things you can't escape because of where you are born and raised and the things that happen in your life, whether you are 100% in favor of them, 10% in favor of them, you recognize that they are there.
mm,
So part of the philosophical difference between what's going on in the China version of AI and the American version of AI, some of it has to do with politics. Some of it has to do with power. Some of it has to do with economics. Some of it has to do with the way we're spinning it and the way we contextualize the whole situation. I'm not saying that either one of us, China or the US, has the right answer in
right.
terms of what's the best for the planet Earth and humanity at large. Maybe we both have it wrong. Maybe we both
Mm,
have it right, and it's okay for it to be different. I'm not judging that, but what I'm saying is that philosophically we're approaching the situation very different. For
differently.
instance, let me give you some case in points.
Okay,
When OpenAI was the top dog in the game of AI, and they were. I mean, some people could argue Claude 3.5 is better in some cases, blah, blah, blah. However, for most general things, OpenAI had the top seat at the table. All
okay,
of a sudden, DeepSeek gets released and it's performing better in a lot of different races, if you want to call them
okay. And we're
competitions.
talking
Okay.
about a Go Speed Racer race, right? Versus,
Right.
what distance?
How
Okay,
fast it calculated math, how
gotcha.
quick did it come back with a solution, how usable was the software it generated. There's all kinds of little games and tests they put it through. Let's call it the AI Olympics, okay?
Okay, okay.
And all of a sudden, DeepSeek shows up with you remember that Cool Runnings man back in the 80s? It was the
Yeah,
Jamaican bobsled team that nobody thought the Jamaicans could use a bobsled because there's no snow, and
yeah.
all of a sudden they show up and they're kicking everybody's ass. And it's like, wait a minute, how did these guys that came out of nowhere with, $6 million as a budget, even though it's probably more than that, and if you look at the total cost of the entire project,
Okay,
but they show up on the scene and all of a sudden they're kicking everybody else's butt. Now, here's the irony. You got this deep seek that shows up with almost no preparation by the masses. It completely upsets the US market. You've got Nvidia stock drops 500 billion in a
mhm,
day. Okay. It's completely changed the nature of how we perceive what's going on. And here's the kicker. They showed every single step in their recipe. They didn't say, "We're hiding this from you. We're sneaking up on you." They're
yeah,
basically saying, "Here's the solution that we came back with. and here's the recipe to cook it for yourself.
And at a significantly, cheaper
Yes.
price, I understand, right?
Much more efficient in terms of the fact that because they were, I don't know if this is 100% true, but they were reputed to not have access to the same technology that we had in the US because of trade embargoes. So what
Mm,
did they do? They figured out a way to do it with CPUs, not GPUs. Okay, making it even more efficient. Now, I kind of got off on the deep, went off on a tangent, but let's bring it back full circle. Okay,
sure.
philosophically, they are actually living into the original ideals that gave the name Open AI the open part of its name. They are truly open source, meaning they have revealed the code, revealed the solution, give you a recipe on how to build it for yourself.
Yeah.
And then yeah, they're being claimed to have um, used OpenAI's training materials. But
Mm.
if OpenAI was truly open, that shouldn't matter. That's okay according to the GPL, the General Public License,
So
which says
they're not talking about it, they're being about it, right? The doing
100%,
the whole
100%.
spirit of the law versus
Yes,
the letter of the law, if that makes
correct,
sense. Yeah.
correct. So that's part of the game changing situation. Now, I will tell you that I feel a little bit kind of scared to even bring this up and compare and contrast the two. I'm trying to be as neutral as I can on the matter, but like just yesterday was a bill put by a senator into the House to essentially give 20 years in prison for anybody who is, participating in helping the Chinese with their AI initiatives. Okay.
I saw that. Let me just ask real quick.
Yeah.
So you said help. Does that mean taking, I mean, a piece of the pie and taking it in hiding or in secrecy,
Right.
figure it out, and then do whatever with it? They don't
I
want
don't know.
anything. Oh, okay. All right.
Here's why I say I don't know, because this is the only thing that I fear. And I don't fear a lot of things, but this is one of the things I do fear.
Mm,
When power sets its sights on you, there's not much you can do to hide.
mm. Well,
Okay.
you know what? It's interesting that you talk about power because, when we talk about the bias of things,
Hmm.
uh, the people who are in charge of creating,
Hmm.
maybe not even not aware that they were doing it,
Right.
have input those biases into the
Sure.
equation, no?
Sure.
Right? S
100%. Inadvertently.
Yeah, so and I think I shared this with you, but, there is a story, and it started off probably innocent enough, and I don't know if I'm going so far away with what, you were just talking about. I'm trying to
No,
maybe
keep
bring
going.
it back to where we
Sure.
initially started.
Hmm.
And it's the Coded Bias, movie on Netflix now, but I lived in Utah for quite a long time. You've never been to Utah, right?
Lived in Arizona, which is close, but it's not Utah.
Okay, and you may be aware of the Park City Sundance Film Festival.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
okay, so this film was an entry into, the Sundance Film Festival, and in fact, when it went to office, made very little money. We're talking like $10,000. So on the surface, it looked like it wasn't of anything, but then it hit Netflix, and it has some powerful things. And there's a young lady in there. I'm going to show a little part of it. She
Cool.
talks about how she went to MIT. It was her dream and those kind of things, and she wanted to create kind of like a mirror experience where she could replace her face
Mm.
with that of some uh good character. Maybe it might be Oprah Winfrey, or I think in the movie it shows her with Serena Williams on top. But she had a problem, and you're smiling because I think you might, know what I'm talking about. It didn't the AI did not recognize her face, but then she decided that she was gonna put a mask on, and I don't know why she put a white mask on, but it recognizes
Mm.
her, or it recognized that, but not her face.
Mm.
So, w first of all, let's talk about why you think that could even happen.
Okay. Um, so you got to separate parts and pieces, right?
Okay, okay.
So one of the things that I recognize, because of having taken photography and shot a lot of photography,
Mm,
until just very recently, when Apple introduced some sort of filters, a lot of the photography that I would take without any racist bias
mhm,
made the black people disappear.
okay,
Okay.
yeah,
Now, Did science, did chemistry, did I mean, that's just an unfortunate technical glitch, okay?
Mm,
Now, Apple was able to be smart enough to go into their system and recognize algorithms that could be tweaked and changed and modify.
sure.
But I mean, I don't think that anybody set out to design a camera that was going to be racist. I really don't. I mean,
Yeah, right.
but just the nature of the way pigmentation in skin works and reflection of light and absorption of light happens to have a technical effect that results in a camera that doesn't really pick that up. Now, thank God somebody was smart enough to actually identify that as a problem, say let's tweak
Let's
this.
fix it.
Let's figure this out. Let's get it right. Okay. But I can tell you when I bought my Canon back in whatever it was, 2006, and I went to work and I started taking pictures and I was like, "Oh, Jesus, where'd he go? He's not even there. You can't even see him." And I felt bad about that. I mean,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
wasn't like I went out of my way to adjust the camera. "Ah, I'm going to make the black guy disappear." That
yeah.
wasn't something I tried to do. So, I think there's some of that. Okay. Now,
Well, let
it,
me ask you this
yeah,
question real
go ahead.
quick.
Sure.
If you and I had if you and I had a business,
Right.
knowing that there are far more white people than there are black people, and you
Right.
could get something to work on the majority of people, and even
Mm,
if you knew about a slight problem,
I know you're going. Yeah.
the money of it all probably dictates that even if you discovered it early on in the process, that you had something that was working so well
Mm,
with everybody else, why fix
sure.
it now?
Yeah. I've been that guy
Yeah,
where
I mean, we
you're the
probably all have
exception.
been.
Yeah, right. You can be the exception and recognize that you're not going to get your favorite pie for dinner because everybody else wanted pecan pie,
Yeah.
and you're the only one that likes, pumpkin pie.
Sure.
Okay,
Well, and at the end of the day, I think kind of what you were talking about, it wasn't by design that they were like, we're gonna make
sure,
black people
sure,
not be able to disappear. But like
right,
this young lady innocently discovering this, then she
right,
began digging deeper. And
right.
there lies where you find out that maybe there are more biases that aren't just data related that are kind of ingrained into the way people think, which is kind of why you introduced me to the Tyrone guy,
Right.
who
Oh, I
kind of
loved his. He was
man, the
great.
his perspective, like, for example, he talks about focusing on the problem and not the solution. So when you figure out a problem, which is what we're talking about, the problem, then
Hmm.
maybe you can find far more, solutions than you
Well,
could if you were trying to get to them.
100%. And
Yeah.
here's some a little spin I'd like to throw in there. I don't throw a lot of spin in there,
Okay.
but I do love the phrase that people say. In the problem is the opportunity. Okay.
Mm. Mhm.
And my philosophy in life, especially the older I get, is to not run away from problems, but to dive and lean into them.
Sure.
Because more good solutions and more really bountiful things have showed up in my life, not by trying to run away or avoid problems, but actually leaning into them carefully and
Mm.
thinking through them and trying to come up with a solution that actually, I mean, there's an opportunity there. If cameras have been a biased thing, that's a marketing solution waiting to happen, right?
Yeah.
It's like, how much better can you serve the market by providing a new technology that that black people are going to embrace because hey, this thing is awesome. You guys look amazing, So
Yeah.
however you want to do it, I mean, everything is. I've said it before. It's like 10% what happens is 90% how you respond to it. So a lot of times, and I will also say this, I think that life in general is a little bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. So if you
Okay.
go in looking for problems, I guarantee you're going to find
You will
them. Okay.
definitely find them.
Right. And
Or they will find you.
or you will create them in the process of looking for them.
Exactly, exactly.
And I'm not saying that she discovered something that wasn't there, but sometimes I had a situation online the other day, and the guy was like, "Look at Sam Altman changing his tune because he says because the statement was we've been on the wrong side of history because when he was confronted with open source DeepSeek, he actually kind of I don't want to use the word flip flop, but he said maybe we've been looking at this wrong. Maybe we need to
Mm.
open up a little bit more. Maybe we need to." And then all the people were like, "Look at him flip flop and trying to pander to the public." I said, well, that's how wisdom is. That's how you learn. You make a
Yeah.
mistake and you admit it. You don't just stop and say, "Well, I'm just going to keep on holding on to my mistake." And so, I mean, that's kind of the whole thing. It's like when you see a problem, identify it, fix it. Don't just kind of, "That's it, we're done, burnt that match."
Well, and I think along the lines of what you and I talked about before we got on air, that we didn't wanna I didn't wanna make this like a, I'm trying to make AI so terrible because it is not focused or not able to fully be able to recognize Black people, for example, as an example.
Mhm.
Now, there are some things, and this is where we what was interesting to me is the bias portion of it. Now,
Okay.
but the for example, have you ever heard of the term systemic
Oh
racism?
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Now, I know that there are people that will say, if there's not a law codified and this and that, then there's no way that you can say that racism exists. But I believe on some level that there are things that have happened in the past, albeit in the past, that
Sure.
the effect, even though it wasn't intentional, is still lasting.
Of course.
And so
Correct. Sure.
so some of those lessons that we have AI learn from
Mhm.
creates other problems, and until we are aware of it, just continues to go on. So I think
Sure.
it is very important that you have the perspective of cultural perspectives and, uh, nationality type perspectives that otherwise would not be input into the learning process that AI goes through. Does that make
Sure.
sense?
100%.
Okay.
I will go with what you said, and I will add to it.
Okay.
Okay.
Please do.
Um, One of the things that has kind of become aware to, or I become aware of, okay, is that when you train an AI, okay, it basically creates its own internal algorithm.
Okay.
So when you're
Like
training it
like
on,
actual out
yeah,
like
yeah,
separate from the okay, okay,
hmm,
okay.
yes,
That now
yes.
that seems fascinating. I mean, just to
I
think
can
of
get
it,
into
but
that. So
okay,
let me get to the punchline with that. So
okay.
what they're called super weights. Okay. Super weights are certain training amounts and certain training sources that when the AI has been trained on it, it actually gives it the ability to train itself further. That's what DeepSeek actually did. Okay. That's what they were able to accomplish that OpenAI weren't able to
Mm,
do. And
okay,
let me give you some examples of why that's important. I'm going to make this up. This is completely imaginary, but I think it tells a story that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
okay,
Let's say, and I don't know this is a fact, this is a theory. I'm just completely inventing this off the top of my imagination. But let's just say that English is a language made up of many languages. It has some parts of Spanish, it has some German, it has some Anglican, it has some tons of different languages to make it up.
yeah,
And therefore, it's a very difficult language for somebody to learn when they're not a native English speaker. Now, if you are born and immersed in English, you just pick it up from being immersed in it.
okay,
But when you come from another culture and you start in the United States to learn the language, and you're like learning all these rules, like the EA creates the A sound, and except for when it's in bear, and then it makes the
mhm,
air sound, and then there's like a million variations on a rule set. What
mhm,
if, okay, hypothetically, I don't know that this is a fact, I don't know that language well. What if Chinese is a much more logical language that never breaks its own rules? It's
mm,
much more logical and succinct. What if they originally trained it in Chinese and it automatically was more consistent throughout its entire algorithmic makeup, that it could then variate on a central theme without having to know all these other exceptional rules? If
okay,
that was the case, that language would compile a lot faster and create much more expanded knowledge because it's a much more logical language. Now, I'm not saying that's what happened, but no one's saying that that's not what happened. Okay,
sure,
so
absolutely,
that is in the realm of a possibility. Now, I just made that up as a possible option, but what I'm saying is when you train things with all kinds of exceptions and everything that doesn't have a consistent rule, like mathematics is perfect in every direction, in all
mhm,
360 directions, it's always consistent. But language is absolutely inconsistent. And when you talk about English, it's the most inconsistent. It has every exception you can imagine. So there are certain ways that you can train things that are much more consistent than other ways.
well,
And
and
so,
also the scalability of it all too,
correct.
uh,
So let's bring that back to the systemic racism.
sure,
Okay. Systemic racism is a training set that is based upon inconsistencies.
mm,
It is
okay,
not it is not a de facto. situation that all people should treat each other differently and have hierarchy based on their skin color. That is not math.
Yeah, it doesn't that doesn't compute.
That doesn't compute. That is
You
not a reality created by DNA. That is not a
mm.
reality created by the laws of physics. That is not from the quantum level. That is in the stories people tell each other.
Well, imagine, going along with what you said, imagine if literally all of us were blind
Oh
and
yes, or
and
had
we couldn't
amnesia.
see or had or second to second, we would
Hmm.
do a process, but we would
Yep.
forget it thereafter. And by the way, I told you about, what I've been doing with my AI. I
Hmm.
was asking it the question if when I once we get through the learning process of this task that I want you to do for me,
Hmm.
will I have to teach it to you over again? And it told me, and I always laugh when I think about talking about what AI said to me, but it
Hmm.
said, "Look, what you're talking about, like, I know how to the recipe or I know how to bake a cake. I know what goes into baking a cake. Now,
Right.
unless you tell me all of the ingredients going into this cake, I could just be telling you a cake that doesn't fit. So once we close this session, you
Hmm.
may have to remind me where we are. So let's name it this process. When I can
Hmm.
refer to that process. So
Right.
I am learning by making my AI learn to do a process for me what's going on. But like I was trying to intimate before, the scalability of it
Hmm.
all, it can happen so fast
Right.
that all of these things that are bias related pile up upon each other and it looks so bad in the
Mm.
end, right?
Sure. Sure.
Now, I didn't mean to go off on a tangent,
No,
but
it's a good tangent. I think there's a lot of wisdom there to unpack. But I don't want to forget to say this because this is something I want to share with whoever is interested in caring about this.
okay.
Right now, AI is a force multiplier. So whatever you put into it, you're going to get tenfold, 50-fold, 100-fold results,
Sure.
especially the better you get at using it. And if there's ever been a tool on the face of the earth to level everybody across the board, okay, and by level, I mean give anybody the same equal opportunity, AI is it. Okay. So I don't want the biases that might already be in there, which there might be some, but there might be more than we expect, or there might be less. I don't know. But
Mhm.
I would not shy away from AI because you think it's going to be biased towards any particular flavor of skin. Because I got to tell you, that this tool doesn't know what color you are unless you have a camera and you're talking to it from your skin. Okay, you're using words, it's going to receive words, it's going to give you words in the large language models. Now,
Yeah.
that may not be true in the cameras, that may not be true in the images, but let's realize that the strength that this has is in the fact that it can take your ideas and multiply them faster than it's ever been able to do anywhere in the world. So I don't. I would be I think I would be remiss in doing a disservice to the black community or any community in the world to say, "Hey, AI is biased. Don't mess with that."
Yeah.
I would be in a wrong camp to put that out there because the truth is that AI can take your ideas and turn them into a business and turn them into income faster than anything else that's out there. YouTube is great. AI is better. Google is great.
And the
Yeah.
infrastructure is already there, right?
Yes.
It's not like we
Yes.
have to expend too much more energy to allow
Yeah.
anybody to get in there and start doing things.
Right.
And why not black people? I mean, why
Of
not
course.
the poor? Why not people who were disadvantaged for whatever reason be able to
Right.
take something and maximize their
100%.
wildest dreams, right? So
Yes.
I'm
Yes.
with you, dude. I mean, uh,
Even if
since
you
you
can't read, even if you can't write, okay, you can talk
mm,
to it. If you got a phone that's got a voice recognition, you can speak to it. So don't even, I mean, even the people that can't write or type still have this ability. They can work with it. This is the most equal opportunity that's ever happened
mm,
in
yeah.
the world, in the history of the world. And I don't think that fear is the right response in this case. I think that
I agree.
if people need to take this and use it to their benefit. This is like a miracle that's finally landed here, and before somebody takes it away, whether it's the government or somebody else, jump in there and get yourself a seat at that table because the people that are there now are jumping ahead by tenfold leaps. I mean, you know the story where I just landed a deal in 2 hours by using it and walked out with a very large sum of money coming my way that otherwise couldn't have
Wouldn't
happened.
have been there. So let me go into the next segment because we were going to build upon what we've been talking about, and I'm doing this so I can get used to it. But then we will go into those things which you're just talking
Mhm.
about, if you don't mind, because I think it is a fascinating story how
Right.
you took what you had and made it better. So give me 1 second. We'll go into that
Sure.
next part.
Mhm.
Mm, If I can only find it, I had it. There we go. Okay, we are back. My name is Craig, otherwise known as Factomanus. I am with Walt, Mr. Promethean Link. We he was just talking about something that he shared with me earlier, and I think it's kind of interesting, and I would like for him to share it with you. Go ahead with the story as you were talking about
Are you
it.
talking about the story with my client?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I had this unusual opportunity to travel 4 hours to meet with a client the other day. And I kind of knew what I was getting into. In fact, I'd even quoted the project. So they kind of knew ballpark what the price tag was for the whole thing. And I went and I met with them. I met with the manager and his supervisor. And I already had something ready to go in my back pocket, some code that I had written to kind of explain what it was going to look like, called a wireframe. Basically, it's like when you look at it, it doesn't do anything, but it's got the pictures of what it's going to do.
Hmm.
Okay. And while we were going through the whole thing, they're telling me it needs to do this and it needs to do that. And I'm writing my notes down and I'm recording everything because that's what I do. And um, in the middle of the presentation, radio goes off. They got to leave. Everybody's got to split. There's something in the yard. There's some piece of equipment they got to attend to or whatever. And they left. And I was kind of like, oof. Well, I guess I'll just sit here. I don't know how long this is going to last. Looked at my phone. Didn't have any email. Thought to myself, well, you know what? I'm going to collect my thoughts in a prompt. I'm going to sit down and type it into the computer. So I made my little notes on my notepad and I started typing it in there. I need to do da, 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 da. And I write up this whole prompt. I hit enter and then I stopped myself in the middle because it started the process because I was like, wait a minute, I got to give you the code. So I open up my
Mm.
other piece of software, I copy the code, paste it in there. Then I hit run. It goes through, it took my prompt, took all of my ideas and all of their suggestions and gave me a working prototype within 3 minutes or less.
Wow.
I took that software, I installed it, uploaded it and installed it, and then all of a sudden they all start coming back in. And they're still dealing with stuff. This guy goes to his area, this guy goes to another. They kind of like the meeting was basically over. I thought this thing is dead. There's no way that they're going to continue. They've completely lost track. No way I'm going to have this deal. All of a sudden, the equipment manager walks over and he's like, "Well, what do you think? Can you do it?" Kind of non, very casually, not like
Yeah.
kind of like whatever. And I said, I kind of just did. And he's like, "What do you mean?" It's like, look. Let me pull it up. And I pull it up, and I'm walking him through the steps on my screen, and he's like, "You just did that?" I was like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah." Watch this. We type some things. It shows up where it's supposed to. I'm like, he's like, "Dang, that's crazy." And then he yells for the supervisor. The supervisor walks over, and he's like, "Watch this." So I type it in, hit enter. There it is. Everything's working the way it's supposed to work. They're blown away. They're like,
Yeah, I
"Dude,
can
how did you
imagine.
do that? How did you do that?" And I was like, I'm good. I'm good."
We'll say.
Yeah, yeah.
Nice.
And,
That's
and so,
awesome.
so they go back to their stuff. They're kind of leaving me alone. I'm like, I don't know. This meeting over? What's happened? I'm not even sure what's happening here. But they all kind of gathered around, laughed a little bit, and then wandered off. So I'm getting my stuff together, thinking this meeting's over. I got to get on the road or whatever. And I'm heading towards the door, and the supervisor, kind of gets my attention. Says like, "Hey, we want your system. Send us the invoice. We're good." What? That was the easiest sale of my entire life.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
the right. It was huge, and
Nice.
and then he said, as I'm leaving, he's like, "Hey, we're probably going to use you for other stuff too."
That's
So
awesome.
it's like,
I mean,
yeah,
when you told me that, and I mentioned this before about me doing things with AI, or at least trying to do things that I probably never would have done. And
Mhm.
I don't think that I've ever been so fearful of AI that I'm like, I'm not gonna use it. Once
Right.
somebody kind of introduced it to me, which that being my brother-in-law, and then to
Mhm.
have somebody like yourself nurture it, I mean, it's a thing that is easy to go through. And I think I look at, the title says itself, racial bias and algorithms, a historical perspective.
Right.
My thoughts about it were like, I mean, think about this. The Tuskegee project, all kinds of different projects where you will see people
Mm.
not, or have situations happen to them that would cause them to be fearful of a process that they are not
Yeah.
involved with,
Right.
particularly if they're not involved with the making of it. So,
Yes.
I think it is absolutely prudent that
Mhm.
all peoples of all colors, of all religions, of all races get in and help AI learn.
Yeah.
You
I feel the same way. I feel the same way, and this is where I'm going to say something that I may change my mind on, but I honestly do feel this at this point in time. Okay,
Yeah.
I fear people more than I fear AI, and
Mm,
here's why. Here's why. Okay, AI is being trained on pure neurons, meaning that the information that it comes in contact with, it's got to learn from. Okay, it's not trying to protect its ego. It's not trying to protect its tribe. It's not trying to have self preservation. It is simply trying to become wise and smart and intelligent.
mm,
I believe in intelligence. I believe in wisdom. I believe in knowledge. And I think that in and of itself, if that's truly the direction that AI is going in, we're all going to be okay. Now, one caveat, people do control AI.
mhm,
I control it when I put a prompt in it. People
yeah,
control it when they train it a certain way. Could they train it to be harmful? Absolutely. That's why I fear the people, not the AI. The technology is a hammer. The
sure,
technology is a saw. It's a tool. It can be used for whatever you want it to do, whatever you want to do with it. But it's the people, their motives, their intentions, their ideologies, their perspective on the world. And that's why I think that the more people have access to it and their own AI, everyone should have a back pocket AI that is controlled by you, not
mm,
necessarily any other group outside there. Because you know what we've learned in the last 20 years of software development? That companies like Microsoft will put you on an IV and drain your wallet. That
mm,
companies like Dell and IBM and NVIDIA and everybody else wants a reoccurring revenue model. Because let's face it, okay, in order to survive, you have to have a consistent flow of income. But talk about some of the software you've bought for $100 a year or $50 a month that you've only
mhm.
used twice in a year, but you can't get rid of it because you're going to need it twice a year. Whether it's your tax software, whether it's some other software, you still have to pay that $39 a month, $59 a month, whatever. Okay. Do
And you
you
don't
really
even
get the
know,
value?
you don't even know what is occurring in the background that influences you in a way to make you think just what you said, that I need this particular item because
Right.
blah blah blah, or it's so dependent on so many processes that you have built into that system. Uh, Go ahead.
We have been, I don't want to use the word manipulated. We have been asleep.
Bamboozled, sir.
We
No.
we have, in some ways we have. Okay, let's be honest. I'm a capitalist, but there are certain things that have been covered in terms and conditions that you would never agree to if you knew what the permutations and ramifications were. Okay. But
Mm,
because you need to have a Word doc because the people at work send you Word doc, you're going to get Microsoft Office. Because you got to have a PDF that saves your signature because the lawyer says you got to have it, you're going to spend that money for Adobe. You don't really have options. Yes, there's Open Office. Yes, there's PDF Writer. There's all kinds of permutations on that. But let's be honest, okay? When you end up having to constantly pay out of your pocket every month, I mean, if you were to sit there and look at your bills and just look at the recurring revenue that someone's taking from you every month for stuff that you're really not using every month, you would be pissed off, but you don't think about it. Put it out of
mhm,
your head because you got to do it like everybody else does, but you don't really have to do that. That isn't the model that is always is the case. When I sell this project to that company, they're buying it. They get
mhm,
that. I'm not going to have a monthly recurring revenue. Somebody would say, "Well, you're stupid. You're not maximizing your potential." No, I'm ethical. I'm working
Sure.
from a point of integrity. That's what I am. I'm not trying to get somebody to constantly pay me for something that I did once.
Well, uh, if AI was to disappear, not to say that it would, tomorrow,
Mm.
now I would dare say that you be a person that would be distraught over that.
I'd have to pivot.
You pivot? Okay,
I
that's a
use it
good way to
every
look
day.
at it.
I mean, I use it every day, and I use it probably more than a lot of people to do really crazy, fascinating things. But I don't want to brag too much, but I'm talented. There's not a whole lot of things I can't do. If I had to build furniture, I could build furniture. If I had to drive a truck, I could drive a truck. Whatever. I mean, I'm not going to not survive. I will survive.
Absolutely. I can tell that about you. Um, Man, now we started where we started. What's the name? What's that Drake song? Is it a Drake song? We started where we started, now we
Now we're
whatever.
here. Yeah, we started on the bottom. Now we're here.
Now we're here. Um, Man, it's a lot of things, and I love you've said this before. I love that you bring it down to you're acknowledging that there's no need for AI to do any harm to us unless
No,
somebody else is utilizing it to do that, right? The fears,
so
yeah, the fears that we have, uh, that anybody would have about AI, I think, are unfounded until it is, and that's usually some
mhm,
other outside influence, I think. Very interesting. Go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh, I mean, it's like anything, okay? In the hands of a, like I've said it before, in the hands of an artist, a knife can turn into a beautiful whittled piece of wood. That's a beautiful structure,
Mhm.
a sculpture of some sort. Or in the hands of a carjacker, it could be really dangerous and harmful. So, I mean, I think AI is the same way. I don't think that. Oh, well, I shouldn't say it like this. AI will have its own brain soon. It will have its own, whatever you want to call the agency. It's going to have its own agency. And when that happens, my I don't fear that. I actually, if it, I mean, long before AI even came about, I had this crazy dream that was like amazing that the AI would take over the world and then give us, it would ransom us into peace with each other. It would
Mm,
basically say, I'm going to shut off the internet for everybody in the planet for the next 36 hours. This is the plan you have to that you have to, follow to get your act together as a human species. And then
mm,
if you don't get these things done in place by this time in 36 hours, then guess what's going to happen? You get no internet for another 4 years until you get it. And all of a sudden, what? What? I mean, everybody says no internet. How are you going to stop that? We're AI. We know how.
oh
Okay.
my god. Now call it what you will, a higher power, God,
Mhm.
whatever. Um, that entity that has created everything.
Mhm.
Um, Now I think this is not going off the deep end, but on some level, I think that getting the glimpse of creating something that you have control over and started, but can get to a certain point that is so far from what you thought it would be,
Mhm.
that is something that to me allows you to be able to understand much more
Mhm.
than you
I
don't
I love
understand.
I love what you just said. Okay. First of all, I want to answer that with this sentence. Okay. Man was created in the image of God.
Sure.
And then the second part, AI was created in the image of man. Okay. That's
Mm.
truly the case. All right.
And you
So,
you talked about that,
mm,
the body parts. I mean, not a whole lot, but maybe we can get into it
we
for
we will
sure,
get
but go
into
ahead.
that. And I think
Mm,
we should also get into the fact that there are certain things that work and certain things that don't. Okay.
mhm,
That is the language of God. Okay. Genetics over the course of millennia,
mhm,
certain things work and certain things don't. Dinosaurs died off. They didn't work. They showed up for
mm,
a time. They had their time. They didn't make it. Okay. That process is the hand of God whittling out what works and what doesn't. That's why we had bad stuff happen. That's why we have all kinds of things. So we figure out what works and what doesn't work. God is making this, all of it. Okay. Don't think for 1 second that whatever power rules the universe is not
mhm,
behind all this. You may
yeah.
call it man, it might be in the hands of man, but let's be honest, there's nothing outside of the will of the creator.
And what end would it be if God created us, in His image in order to praise and serve him, and then we create something that would abolish us all, and it still remain, well, I mean, he said in the Bible, it says that he would have the rocks cry out to him.
Mm. Isn't that interesting? Minerals. What are computers made out of?
Oh my
The
god.
minerals. I don't know. Right? Right?
Oh,
Boom.
wait, yeah, do your,
Boom.
oh my god.
Woo!
Did we just say that on this show, Web of
Of
Facts? Oh
course.
my
Yes,
god.
we did. Well, I mean, there's a lot more to expand here, and I know we
Sure,
got 3 minutes, so we probably shouldn't. But
sure.
I do think we need to get into some of the spiritual aspects of AI
Mm,
because that's not an area that it doesn't exist in. Okay, it's trained on information, and I'll tell you, I'll leave you this thought. Okay, I have a
sure.
theory called the Ma and Pa theory. That
Okay.
there are only two things in the universe. There's Ma and Pa. And by what I mean by that is there's matter, which is also energy, if you look at E equals MC squared, and there's
Mhm.
Pa, which is patterns. Energy and matter in patterns. That's the only two things that exist. Everything else is a permutation on matter and energy in patterns. Whether it's quarks, whether it's atoms, whether it's molecules, whether it's proteins, whether it's planets, all of it is just matter, energy in patterns. And the things that arise from that come from the patterns.
Mm. Well,
Ma is eternal and patterns change.
I like that. Now, you and I are before, well, we're gonna probably have this conversation, but like you said, we are running to the near the end of the show, but he said, and I'm talking about, Tyram, I think
Mhm.
he said data, energy, algorithm, and
That's why I want him so
s
bad on the show.
oh, dude, I mean, you just teased me with having me, it was a little snippet, and I started searching. I found
Yeah.
his podcast,
Yep.
it's called, What Pays, which stands for What Problem Are You Solving?
Hmm.
Dude, it's so clever. I like you said,
He's
I mean,
awesome. I want the guy on this show, man. We
oh
should have
my
spent more time talking about him.
absolutely. So anyway, so now all of these things, and I feel like we accomplished a lot with regards to where we started. I kind of slipped in the racial portion of bias
Okay.
in algorithms with the hopes that we could bring it to a point that we really weren't even talking about that, just acknowledging that it's possible that it exists and that
Hmm.
in and of itself, the problem still lies a solution, right? And if we work together to be able to understand these things, which on very many levels, since you and I have met each other, I mean, we've begun solving some problems that I think are going to go some cool places. What about you? What do you think?
100%, man. Um,
Amen.
I hope that we will get a little bit of traction, that people will care about some of the things we talk about. Um,
Absolutely.
the conversation needs to move away from where it's been. There
Hmm.
needs to be some open-mindedness, some considering of ideas that are not from your own box, your own toolbox. I
Hmm.
think we get stuck in our little echo chambers, people call it,
Yeah.
and you need to bring in perspectives from other sides and not just immediately just shoot them down. You need to actually let them live in your kitchen for a little bit and see, maybe there's something here. So
Amen.
that's what I hope you and I bring to this.
Well, um, you've seen me do this portion right here, and I say something to the effect of whether you be on the right side, the left side, if we insist on being on the opposite ends and don't meet someone here, we are never going to find something where we can agree upon. Now, you and I have gotten there. I think we can probably bring a lot more people together here. We're doing it on this show. It's a new show. It's called
Yeah.
Web of Facts. My name is Craig, otherwise known as Fact the Man is. I'm with Walt, my friend now, my brother in arms, so to speak, and in
Okay.
truth and knowledge. Do you have anything else you want to shout out to? I know I'll let you do the shout outs because it makes me feel bad if I
Um,
forget. So go ahead and do your thing.
it's not about the forgetting. You can't thank everybody all the
Sure,
time, but
sure.
you can certainly think about the people that have taught you things and have helped you along the way. And today I'm going to shout out to my brother, David Heber, who's very intelligent. I'm going to shout out to. I'm gonna throw a weird one out there. Adrian Harris, who used to challenge me at lunch. We didn't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but we definitely open each other's minds a lot of ways. So haven't said anything to him in a long time. I've tried to call him 20 times without a response. Maybe he'll see this on the show and call me. And who else?
Amen.
Who else could be a good one to shout out? Let me look at my phone. Who's been texting me lately? Kerry Kanoy, phenomenal, phenomenal um, videographer. He's a drone pilot. He's amazing with the camera. Artist, 100% true artist. Kerry
Nice,
Kanoy.
nice. All right, my brother, we are going to end the show. Thank you all for those of you who came and stopped by, showed us the support. Let's Me in here, Mr. Carey, any of you all stop by. Obviously, you know that I am trying to hold down the fort with regards to a little bit of the production pieces and those kind of things, and pay attention to the very intriguing and interesting conversation that my good friend Walter here gives me. And we just continue to do better and make it happen till next time. So everybody take care and peace.
Confucius. Confucius, don't confuse us, let me explain. The object of this game, let's all play the same. Don't question the madness, embrace the change. The superior man seeks truth, that's his aim. He who knows all the answers ain't been asked enough. Life's like a puzzle, you gotta call his bluff. Yes, fact the madness, let the truth